you meet, say, 700 of the brightest minds in India who have cleared the same exam, who are also school toppers like you, who've done very well, throughout their academic journey as well, and it can get a little overwhelming. I think graduation, you're younger, it's a process of discovery, and post-graduation, just by the name and at the stage of life you do it, it's a process of rediscovery. You get the opportunity to participate in case competitions, you get the opportunity to lead teams, work in teams, so you are able to sort of come out of your shell a little bit.
So, hi Adhiraj, welcome to the very first episode of Transition Stories powered by SSB. So, let's start from the very beginning. So, tell us about your personal life, a little bit about your family, and what was your education background back then?
It's been a while. I turned 30 this year, so perhaps a good time to reflect on how the journey has been. Would want to reflect back on my growing days in Indore. That's where my family was. My dad was like many other people in Indore, had a small business of his own in auto spare parts, which I was thankfully never interested in. I was very fascinated by education. I was a nerdy kid growing up. Around 10th, I think, that's when we had the board exams, and I did pretty well in my school, scored above 95%, and the push was to prepare for the JEE exam. Those 2 years were a slog. I gained about 12 kgs of weight, but the result and outcome was good. I got a good rank in JEE of 2011, but it wasn't good enough for what I thought was my dream college. I wanted to end up at either IIT Bombay, Delhi or Kanpur, and even though I had secured a rank around 4,500 or so, the only options were in some of the other IITs which were not a preference. So I tried again. I pushed for another year, took a drop, and made it to IIT Kanpur, which was sort of like my dream college back then.
So, because you have mentioned IIT Kanpur, tell us more about your IIT Kanpur journey, and how was your academic and non-academic life there?
It was also my first time living away from home, and as an 18-year-old, you get, you meet, say, 700 of the brightest minds in India who have cleared the same exam, who are also school toppers like you, who've done very well, throughout their academic journey as well, and it can get a little overwhelming. But because I didn't live up to my potential, I sort of made up for it in the second half and the latter part of my career and journey going forward. But third and fourth year is when the electives kick in, or when your core courses that you've signed up for kick in, and that was economics for me with a lot of mathematical bent which I liked. So the journey became smoother. I was a lot more interested in the coursework. The professors were excellent, and economics lends itself to applications in finance. Because I was slightly more driven to do more real world stuff, I took up a job in finance. For me, unluckily or luckily, as it turned out, I had about 8 interviews lined up for day 1 and 2, and I sort of managed to mess all of them up. It was my 9th interview on day 3, and Oxane was a new up and coming startup supporting private equity funds, investment banks in their deals, and it was an onshore offshore kind of setup. Loved their pre-placement talk, and I had a shortlist, and I was able to manage. I managed to clear that interview, so that worked out well.
Tell me that how did you decide then go for post-graduation, and what prompted you to take that decision?
Right. So an MBA had always been in my mind, given a lot of my friends who I also spoke about and whose sort of positive peer pressure led me to JEE prep. They were all thinking about a US MBA at that point. But for me, I also wanted to stay in India long term, and ISB at that point made sense. One of the other reasons why I wanted to switch was I'd been working at Oxane for 3 years and had seen the 0 to 1 journey very well. But at some point I felt that, hey, the models that I make or the work that I do, someone else at the front end is deploying the money or seeing the outcome of that. And an MBA might help me catapult into a more front-end role.
After post-graduation, you've joined BCG, a dream company for a lot of people, right? Did you always wanted to get into consulting, or it is something that, after getting into ISB, the exposure that you've got, you thought that, consulting was a calling for you?
I wanted to get into consulting, but I didn't know it would be so hard to get into consulting. Like, for example, at the end of the 3rd or 4th term, I was at a GPA of 3.8 plus out of 4, which is amongst the top 5 percentile of the batch, and that could only be because I sacrificed a few parties, sacrificed a lot of my social life, and slogged for grades. That's an easy way to get a shortlist. In fact, the campus offer that I had wasn't from BCG. It was only later, once I had graduated, they had an opening in their financial services space, which also tied in with my work at Oxane, that I was able to secure a position at BCG, even though I had a shortlist during my SB year.
When you've co-founded School of Life, a completely new direction for you in your career, can you share what motivated you to take that leap?
While you say that it's a completely different tangent to BCG, these things are happening actually in parallel. So funnily enough, my ISB graduation was right in the middle of the pandemic, and people had the luxury of doing two things at a time. And to kill time, we started School of Life, we meaning my sister and I. My sister was my co-founder in this venture. As just a pet project of ours, because we saw kids, nephews, cousins who were stuck in the pandemic, nothing to study, and we thought, hey, why don't we take a crack at this and start something which is not only novel but will help students in this pandemic time, but with the vision of teaching good quality stuff to young kids. We started off with courses in public speaking, creative writing, mental math, based out of Indore in our hometown, working out of our apartment there. We sort of ramped up to a couple of crores in revenue, spread across 8 countries. Like we had kids from the US, Europe, the MENA region, scaled the platform to around 30 teachers on our platform, and ran for a good 1.5-2 years.
How do you think that a graduation and a post-graduation 2 degrees have impacted you in a different way? Because I think these are the two very important transitions a normal person would see.
I think graduation, you're younger, it's a process of discovery, and post-graduation, just by the name and at the stage of life you do it, it's a process of rediscovery, right? So not only did ISB help me make a transition from finance to consulting and whatever I did later, I think ISB was very helpful in me, rediscovering some of the things that I liked as a kid, but that had gotten lost during JE prep or during undergrad, where there is a different kind of exposure that you get. To make the example more concrete, I used to love doing debates or public speaking, and an MBA opens you up for that, right? You have to give group presentations day in, day out. You have to interact with a lot more diverse peer group. You get the opportunity to participate in case competitions, you get the opportunity to lead teams, work in teams. So you are able to sort of, come out of your shell a little bit.
If I'm not wrong, any post-graduation, if you see, will help you to get the right exposure. How do you define a right exposure in terms of a person who is, trying to make a transition, and that too through a post-graduation program?
Right. Right exposure could mean different things to different people. For me, it was academic redemption. I felt like I had already spoken. I felt that I hadn't lived up to my potential at IIT Kanpur, and I really, really wanted to do well academically at ISB, which I did to a large extent. B, it was about the people that I interacted with, a lot more diverse peer group, people with people with different ages, backgrounds, etc. And it made me a more empathetic person and gave me a different worldview and perspective. But the third aspect and a softer aspect was, you coming out of your own shell and interacting and pushing yourself out of your comfort zone, because you only have, say, 24 hours in a day, and there is a lot to do, and you have to sort of prioritize things. You have to lead with authenticity, do a lot more, because it's a 1-year time frame that you're working in.
Do you think that post graduations kind of make you more industry ready, or would it make you more aware about what's there in terms of the kind of job roles that you're going to take up, the responsibilities that you're going to take up?
Right. Again, it is an answer that depends on how deep you want to get into a particular field. But an MBA would definitely increase your worldview, because you're interacting with the top professors, a peer group that is very diverse, like I mentioned. And B, it will help structure your thoughts in a way, or give you a perspective to communicate your thoughts in a way that it makes it easier for a counterpart to understand.
At what point in your life you think that creating impact in your careers was more important rather than just following a very traditional career?
So in my ISB interview, like I had said, I'd want to work in the education sector, and I had no idea back then that it would eventually work out for me that way. So it's funny that it happened. But I've always felt at times that I'm a teacher at heart more than a business professional. And this way of being associated with education startups in the education industry makes me, get the best of both worlds. I can see the immense satisfaction and joy that a student gets when they transform, when they are able to upskill, and that gives me a lot of gratification, while still being associated closely to what I have studied at IIT Kanpur, at ISB, and being close to the world of business, but also being close to the world of education and teaching, which is where my heart